course you gotta do that. Are we really doing this right now? What's good to everybody that's tapping in with us, man? We in here today. This is why I don't really do this shit, because it drags. It helps the situation to drag. All right. That's the bullshit that I'm talking about right there. It's exactly what the hell I'm talking about. Give me just a minute, y'all. I'm trying to get this thing in right. You gotta be kidding me right now. This shit is tweaking out right now. What we're dealing with right now. That's better. That's better. We are almost on the road. Good to go. What's good? What's good to everybody that just tapped in? I apologize for taking so long to get this whole thing jumping. But hey, what's good? What is good? I'm gonna share this live, so if I'm not talking to you, that's why right now I'm just trying to get the live out, and I'm not gonna leave a message for anybody. I'm just gonna just send it straight out so I can get everybody in that I can. So I hope everybody's enjoying this 420's lovely, lovely 420 day. You know, it's what we like to do here. It's what I do all the time. We talk about getting it in on that level with, with the, rapping and, you know, for most artists, you know what I'm saying, smoking weed is sort of a tradition, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's kind of like, the one thing that artists do that's almost, that almost runs hand in hand, almost, because not all rappers smoke. A lot of rappers are drinkers, but for the cannabis smokers, you know what I'm saying. This episode today is for y'all. We having this conversation with y'all because we want to talk about this. And the reason why we're going to talk about this is because if you, like me, you value the properties that cannabis does. You know what I mean? You value those properties that cannabis has. The fact that cannabis is a plant that got a funky ass rap in the beginning and nobody understood why, other than the people living in that era, and they all had their own objective reasons behind it. But as more and more people started moving away from those chaotic times where we didn't have all of these, different restrictions from certain things, because at one point, cannabis, you only really seen smokers, and you found these guys in like the furthest corners. You know what I mean? It was almost like, it was a secret thing to do that nobody should have known, nobody should know about, that kind of thing. And my biggest thing about it is I feel like, over the many years that we've fought and fought to show the opposite, it finally has come around for people to be able to properly enjoy this plant and all of its properties. So, you know what I'm saying? Today's episode, we're here today to pay homage to any and everybody who respects the cannabis plant. You know what I mean? So, yeah, that's what we on today. And I appreciate everybody tapping in with me for the 420 moments. We in here today to kind of kick this thing off the right way, showing nothing but the utmost love and respect to everybody that's tuned in with us, and giving y'all nothing but love and praise, because when we come to smoking and having a good time, honestly, there ain't no better time than to have you a good old smoke with it. Shit, just saying. I don't know about y'all, but we are about to have this conversation about cannabis. All right. and I'm almost done sharing my invitation out to people. So you know what I'm saying? Once we get that fixed, stated, we get that good to go, and everybody that I am sending my invitations out to gets the invite. If anybody is in to tap in, I appreciate y'all for staying tuned and just holding with me, you know what I'm saying? Because I know it's not easy sitting here while I'm, trying to get all of this shit to going, and it's not as immediate as most people are when they do their thing and they go live and all that shit. So for me, I just appreciate y'all for staying tuned with me and just riding with me for this little duration of time to take this moment in time and do what I'm doing, you know what I'm saying? So I appreciate y'all for bearing with me. I don't know what this is. All right, I'm nearing the bottom now. I'm just so yeah, yo. I just want to tell y'all, man. 420. That's one. Two. I'm gonna bring y'all back to when I first started smoking. First off, before we even get into the conversation of cannabis, a little history lesson, and all of that good stuff, I'm gonna give y'all a little backstory on my cannabis history. Right. So first time ever smoking weed. First time ever smoking weed. I was 11 years old. My sister's baby father, her first child's father. You know, um, him and his cousin came over to the crib. Came over to my crib. This was back when I'm not sure if any of my people that sit here remember, but do y'all recall the movie Tales from the Hood? You know what I'm saying? If y'all remember that movie Tales from the Hood, then y'all definitely know where I'm going. Y'all definitely can get a date on when my smoking first began. You know what I'm saying? So peace and love to everybody that's tapped in right now. Yo, we just want to give you a little backstory right now. Yeah, yo. So technically, basically, this is what happened. I started off at 11. My sister's baby father, her first baby father, had him and his cousin had came over with the bootleg movie Tales from the Hood. So we was watching this movie, and these two stepped outside, and I technically, was curious. I didn't know what they was doing, so I was being nosy. I ran my ass outside, see what the fuck they was doing, Needless to say, I did not expect what was going to happen next. They, kind of like escorted me over to a corner space on the side of my house, which was like between this wall unit. It was like a closed-in like room where they used to where meters are. The power, the meters for power and electricity or whatever, whatnot. So it was on the side of that room. We were on the side of that building there, and fucking had me pinned in the corner pretty much. They were like trying to force this motherfucking blunt in my hand and said, "Look, if you don't smoke this shit, if you don't take this blunt and smoke it, we're gonna fuck you up." I'm like 11 years old, mind you. I knew these kids, these motherfuckers had to be like 18, 19 at least, because I knew that they was at least a few years older than my sister. My sister at the time was like 15, 14, you know what I'm saying? So, but I knew they was at least a few years older than my sister. So, like, at the end of the day, yeah, they had the upper hand. But, my being afraid to stand up and get my ass whooped at 11 years old at that time, I partook And because of my partaking in this journey that began so long ago, shit, man, that was 25 years ago. You know what I'm saying? To today, 25 years ago. You know, so but you know, it was just crazy how that whole thing was going on, and just really tuning myself to a whole nother level of euphoria that I never experienced before. You know what I'm saying? Till then, my greatest high was motherfucking a sugar rush or a fucking brain freeze from icy that I ate too fast or some shit. Never experienced that kind of high before, and I just really enjoyed the fact that it made me happy. It made me laugh. I was laughing my ass off. Now, mind you, if any of you guys have ever seen the movie Tales from the Hood, if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. Check it out. Tap in with your local digital streaming networks that that you usually stream your movies and shit on, like Netflix or Hulu. Matter of fact, I don't even know if Netflix has it, but I'm pretty sure you can find this movie on Prime Video. I'm almost certain you can find that movie on Prime Video. But if you were to go back and look at this movie and watch this movie and go through the motions and time and the simple scenes that were in that movie, you know what I'm saying? It will really shed some light on what I'm trying to tell you right now. Because imagine this was like a horror movie. This is supposed to be a horror movie, back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Relevantly famous horror movie at that, because there was so many different star actors, black star actors that were casted in that movie. You know what I'm saying? That it was just wild, like to have so many different people that were in on that movie, and then to have it evolve the way it did. And I mean, to be honest with you, it never got as much recognition, but I'm rambling on that. So anyway, yeah, like I literally was watching this movie. This movie is supposed to be gory. It's all kind of weird, crazy, spooky shit going on in it. And it's supposed to be scary, but that shit made me laugh. I was laughing my ass off. Laughing like a motherfucker. Couldn't help it. All right. And yeah, like that was when that was when my smoking days began. Ever since then, aside from the times when I was around my father, and even then it really wasn't very much. Well, I don't say it wasn't very much. It was a lot less when I was around my father than it was around my mom, because when I lived with my mom, I just was a wild ass little boy. That's why she sent me to my father a lot. But just imagine, at 11 years old, watching this movie that's supposed to be a scary movie that most little kids would be fucking terrified of, but instead of me creeping out, being creeped out, and hiding underneath a blanket so I don't see fucking screen and all that shit, I'm sitting there watching that shit intently, laughing my ass off. You gotta understand, I was dying laughing. Okay? And it was so funny to me. And it was all too fucking funny to me. So, from that point, I realized that it was a good way for me to, deal with a lot of crap that I was going through. So, whenever I would be back in my mom's, custody, and I'd be living there and stuff, it was one of the main things I wanted to do, and I enjoyed doing, in the privacy away from everybody, and being to myself. Oh yeah, Saturday nights, every Saturday night we on that. DJ Slam, I see you back, bro. I bet your ass won't be pulling no more of those live streams no more, my G. Yeah, I heard about what happened on your live stream while you been missing in action for a minute. But anyway, look, I feel like we gotta go back. I feel like what we really should be talking about is something reflective, especially when it comes to cannabis. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people don't know the history of cannabis and how it started, why it was outlawed, and all of these different things. So let's go with, when was cannabis first discovered?
According to Wikipedia, hemp seeds discovered by archaeologists at Pazyryk suggest early ceremonial practices like eating by the Scythians occurred during the 5th to 2nd century BC, confirming previous historical reports by Herodotus.
Now, I just learned something, even in that. So dating back as far as 5th and 6th century BC.
Cannabis has an ancient history of ritual use and is found in pharmacological cults around the world.
It has a ancient.
Look
at that. Look at that. That's fascinating. Okay, so you're telling me that before all of this crap, Joker, what's happening, my dude? Happy 420 to everybody that's tapping in with us, man. Yeah. Listen, I just really realized that cannabis is a very ritualistic plant that we've been utilizing for centuries. Just found that out, right? Now, the first cannabis plants being found in performed rituals from historic 5th to 2nd BC, 2nd century BC. You see what I'm saying? So this was something that's been around. It's a part of us. It's been a part of us since before we knew what it was, or before we had even took into advisory what it does in a whole. So with that being the process, right? The next question I have is, why was cannabis outlawed?
According to Britannica, the short answer is racism. Around this time, many states began passing laws to ban pot. In the 1930s, Harry J.
Now, how about that? Is that the weirdest thing or not? Like here I am thinking that it was just some, way to, kind of censor people and make people feel like, this was deplorable and nobody should be doing this, and this is like watching a porno and instead of turning away, you went and grabbed the leather straps and leather straps, the whip and the chains, and tied your mate up with the ball gag and all that good old shit, right? You know, they made us think that this was really that fucked up, right? Now, we're finding out that racism was the key behind why cannabis was outlawed. Okay. And we already, as black folks in here, should know, if there's any black folks in this room at this moment, we all know the reason why that shit was a relevant answer to say. Hell, if you look at the typical situation in America today, to say before the cannabis laws that were written in for states to legalize it in their areas. Before all of this, the massive incarceration rate was crazy, and majority of the people that were in there were in there for bag pot, a couple ounces of pot. You know what I'm saying? Normal, everyday smokers who chose not to take in on the cancer train of smoking these goddamn cancer sticks that I'm trying to get rid of, or drinking the alcoholic beverage that's killed so many people on the road and off. You dig? They took in and outlawed it. Not caring about the fact that it had anything to do with anything. But everything to do with the fact that people liked it. They didn't like that people liked it. They want people to, and for some reason it begs the question: does our government want its citizens to be miserable? Do they want us to be violent? They want us to be disgruntled? Do they like when we start in chaotic scenes in our streets and cities? Do they like that shit? Do they get a kick? Do they get a rise out of watching these things take place? Because it's a question that begs to differ a lot more questions. Because it's real. Better guilty. Fuck you. Fuck out of here. I didn't even get a chance to see the updates that I've had. I've heard so far that they have passed a verdict on the Derek Chauvin Derek Chauvin case. Honestly, I feel like he's guilty. Many other people do. But at the end of the day, it's not what I say that counts. It's what the 12 jurors in the motherfucking room say. So, in this case, 14 jurors. 14. 5 that were white men, 7 that were white women, and the other ones that were of mixed varieties. All right, so that tell you a lot. There was one. There was literally one. There was one black woman in the whole jurors, in the whole juror section. There was one black woman. Okay. It's so outlandish, like, cause I mean, in a sense, like, we sit and we think that, you know, as Americans, as even, you know, black people in America, you know what I'm saying? We often think that, you know, the Constitution is systematically set up so all of us are treated equally nowadays, right? But in actuality, there are still certain things that are going on within our government that are really not suited for any of us people of color. Like, really not at all. They don't give a fuck either. They don't care about it at all. So it's just, it begs to answer those questions, like, and it makes you want to dig into certain things. But back onto what we were talking about, which is the history of cannabis and why it was outlawed. I seen that, but I also seen the most interesting thing that was talked about a while ago.
The Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 essentially banned it nationwide despite objections from the American Medical Association related to medical usage. This act came just a year after the film Reefer Madness warned parents that drug dealers would invite their teenagers to jazz parties and get them hooked on reefer. August 4th, 2017.
Did you hear that, y'all? I don't think y'all heard that. Let me replay that for y'all in close up.
The Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 essentially banned it nationwide despite objections from the American Medical Association related to medical usage. This act came just a year after the film Reefer Madness warned parents that drug dealers would invite their teenagers to jazz parties and get them hooked on reefer. August 4th, 2017, heading 3.
Listen, now that was an article that was written 3-4 years ago about the reasons for why medical marijuana was canned, and it was outlawed in the country because Reefer Madness had hit the films, and every freaking person in America felt like reefer was gonna make every one of their kids become potheads, and it was gonna turn them into some deviant fucking, you know, weirdos or whatever the fuck their thought process was behind it. I never even watched that movie, Reefer Madness. I thought that shit was stupid. I seen clips of the movie and I thought it was just the weirdest thing. It's like, how do y'all take something that y'all really knew nothing about? Because if you didn't know anything about it, why was this a case?
Voice search button. Tap.
Did the U.S. government use cannabis at one time before it's outlawed?
Here are your results.
Okay, it gives me my results instead. Thought it was gonna tell me.
The legal history. Slower. Missing. The legal history of cannabis in the United States pertains to by the mid-1930s, cannabis was regulated as a drug in every state, including 35. Cannabis was officially outlawed for any use, included with passage of 1970.
Yeah, that was the Drug Act.
Loud. Must include. Loud. www.3.org. America's Marijuana Evolution, Third Way. www.America's Marijuana Evolution, Third Way.
That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something else.
Search result. https:// Voice search button. Tap to speak.
Did the U.S. government military use cannabis?
According to Wikipedia, cannabis usage is currently prohibited in the United States military, but historically it has been used recreationally by some troops, and some cannabis-based medicines were used in the military as late as the 20th century.
Now, did y'all hear that? All right, now, so they're basically saying that cannabis was being used in the military earlier, all right, in the early 20th century, which wasn't that long ago if you think about it. You know, it wasn't that long ago at all. Okay, so what I was looking for was the ideology that folks did not know about cannabis, and Google obviously is not trying to tell nobody, but This is something that people don't know about the government and what cannabis was doing, and cannabis, right? So people didn't know. A lot of people didn't know that around in World War I, the uniforms, the parachutes, even the boots that the army soldiers in our wars fought in our wars wore was made from hemp plant. It was a hemp plant-based cloth. They literally fabricated a fucking shirt, pants, a parachute, a pretty much nylon parachute that they used in World War I for made from cannabis plants. Okay, so when that was the issue, why now did they decide, against what they were doing? And that's one. And then the second question is basically just, what was so bad about cannabis that y'all had to feel like that you just had to let it, give it a big fuck you? Appreciate you, Mr. You know me. You already know, man. We gotta get it in, man. So, I mean, I'm having this conversation with y'all because mainly, like, there's nobody in here but me and maybe one other person. And another thing is, I don't have any weed to smoke. I have to sit back and relax and enjoy my soberness as it is, because I can't do anything else about that. But at the end of the day, I'm not mad about that at all, man. I'm actually happy because I smoked earlier today anyway, so I enjoyed my 420 moment early this morning. I had a wake and bake. It was my last bowl of the day. It was the last bowl I will see until probably next week. But hey, it's better than nothing, right? Because at the end of the day, I'd rather have had my one bowl to smoke for 420 than to be no bowls to smoke at all and sober as a jaybird. That's no fun. No fun on 420. So again, shout out to everybody that's got their blunts right, rolled up, tight, bags, busted, broke down, and blunts gutted, wrapped up. You know what I mean? Papers, you know what I mean? Bowls packed up and lit, smoking and choking. You dig me? Because that's what we like to do, man. We get it in. We smoke. I've been smoking with y'all pretty much every day this week, every day this month, you know what I mean, for just my full 420 celebration. So I'm not too upset about not having anything right now. I just also want to say that, this day in general, man, for the pot smokers out here in the world, man, we literally have to say a good thank you to the fact that, these laws are starting to flip. These states are starting to flip on the cannabis outlaw rules and stuff. Like, so things are starting to take a different shape for, the future of cannabis and the marijuana industry. Because, people, somewhere down the line, people knew that this was a good thing to have. The question I want to ask is, when was marijuana recognized to have medical properties?
According to Wikipedia, in the United States, 36 states and the District of Columbia have legalized cannabis for medical purposes, beginning with the passage of California's Proposition 215 in 1996.
That's great. That wasn't what I was asking you, though. I'm going to try to see if I can locate this question. But we're going to come back to it.
In the United States, 36 snippet. Edit. Was marijuana recognized to have in the United States, 36 about search in list medical use of cannabis marijuana history in the U.S. Tap to activate. When was marijuana covered? What can you set a timer? When marijuana history in the U.S. Medical use of cannabinoids. Marijuana.
Medical use of cannabinoids. Cannabinoids. That's a funny ass word to say.
According to the National Center of Complementary and Integrated Health, NIH, drugs containing cannabinoids may be helpful in treating certain rare forms of epilepsy, nausea and vomiting associated with cancer chemotherapy, and loss of appetite and weight loss associated with HIV/AIDS.
Ain't that some shit? So imagine if you got cancer and you're going through chemotherapy and it's making you fucking nauseous every day. Like you come home, you feel like you're just gonna throw up every fucking thing that's left in your stomach, including the stomach acids that dissolve the food that you ingest in your stomach. Then they allow you to take this oil, a couple of drops on the tongue, and your nausea starts to dissolve. Or for people dealing with things like bulimia, for example, people who not bulimia, bulimic, but it's people who, you know, for people who have a problem with eating disorders, you know what I mean, where they don't eat a lot, they don't eat at all, maybe, you know what I mean, they have a problem where, you know, they have a high level of intolerance for food that they put in their stomach, and it not accepting, you know, their body not accepting it. So the cannabis plant has been known to give these people the appetites that they need to eat. You see what I'm saying? Like that's just a small portion of the stuff that they were discovering that cannabis can do. Okay.
Voice search button. Tap
This is something that I thought was interesting because, you know, I wanted to ask this question.
What feed help? Search button. Type. Voice search button.
What does cannabis do for lupus patients?
According to the Recovery Village, specifically, cannabis lowers levels of something called interleukin-2 and raises interleukin-19, which is an anti-inflammatory protein.
Now, another fascinating thing we're learning today. Now, this is just specifically around lupus. You know,
Out of list.
the question I'm going to ask next is for those people that don't know, because I don't really know what it is, but we're going to find out right now. What is lupus?
According to Mayo Clinic, an inflammatory disease caused when the immune system attacks its own tissues.
Now, that seems to me like it actually is a bad thing, right? When your body's basically attacking itself, okay? That's not cool. And I mean, the properties that marijuana is actually giving a patient with lupus is phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? Because being that it has so many different properties, man, I'm just saying, yo, we are definitely looking at a situation where this plant has really changed and revolutionized the game, man. So shout out to everybody that's tapped into the room today. To y'all that are seeing the comment pinned on the screen. Today's topic of the day conversation is about cannabis, because we're talking about 420's very own theme of today, you know, because I'm a smoker. I love to learn about, you know, things that are different and things like, you know, that I'm interested in. A lot of stuff like, especially specifically cannabis, because as a connoisseur of cannabis, you want to be well educated on the background of what cannabis has been through, what the story behind why cannabis was so revered and feared at one point. Excuse me. So, I mean, this is something that I really felt like this was going to really touch on some deep subject. So, as we're talking about this, I got a question for y'all. All my smokers. This question is for all my smokers. in the room right now. What's your flavor? What's your favorite smoke? What's your favorite weed to smoke, and why? And what are some of your flavors what are some of the flavors that you've tried already? You know, because as we know, cannabis has definitely expanded into more hybrid strains, and it has definitely come of age to be tempered with, to the point where it's just they started to merge different types of hybrid plants, hydroponic plants, I should say, and turn them into some totally different species. I seen something very, very weird once. This was a while ago, where they spliced a cannabis plant with a fucking Venus flytrap. Weird shit. Weirdest shit I'd ever seen in my life. I thought I had seen some weird shit on video before, but that was probably by far one of my fucking most weirdest things I had seen on video. So the question of the day for today's topic of the day is, for my smokers, what's your favorite? What you smoking on right now? Tell us what you got in your personal bag right now. You know what I mean? We just want to know, because hey, it's 420. You know what I'm saying? And if you care to smoke with me, if you care to come on the live and tap in with your boy while we having this conversation on cannabis and history of cannabis, why it was outlawed, the many multiple, just a few of the many medical properties that it holds, along with the government's history behind it, because as we know, and that's something that I was just saying earlier, the government actually used to use cannabis. They used not the plant itself, not the leaf. They used the actual stems to create the uniforms that our military wore at one time. Cannabis was lined into their fabrics. It was in their fabrics. It was a very elastic and long-lasting fabric that did not wear down as fast as cotton did. So when they used cotton, it wasn't that they decided to use cotton as a way to show that we could use anything to make fabric, but it was because the industry had become, flipped. They flipped it by the time Reefer Madness hit, and then the bills that they passed in the 1970s and 30s, 37, just before World War II, made things a lot worse, right? So the cannabis plant was on its way up, and folks didn't like folks in the timber companies didn't like that, because the timber companies, the people who owned the timber companies, also owned the tobacco companies as well. They were partnering them with tobacco companies, and they realized that if the cannabis plant were to take its rise to the occasions that it was given, it would be making the actual timber industry, tobacco industry, obsolete. It would render it obsolete, because of the fact that there were no negative properties on that, and nobody could find anything negative about it, other than the fact that the people were like, "Oh, you smoke some reefer, you're gonna be this, you're gonna do that," and they often wanted to describe you as just slow and weird. Period. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what their true nature thoughts were behind this thing, but in all honesty, when we talk about this cannabis plant, we sit back and we don't even analyze the fact that, they hate that damn plant because of what it was doing to the country. Not even what it was doing to the country in a bad way. It was the fact that people enjoyed doing it. and they were enjoying it more than the tobacco companies. Tobacco and cannabis.
Here are your results for tobacco and cannabis.
HTTPS results. Substance use. Using cannabis and tobacco together.
No, that's not what I wanted.
Search button.
Tobacco versus cannabis.
Here are your results for tobacco versus cannabis.
The relationship between tobacco and cannabis use. Link. The relationship tobacco and cannabis use. Dash. Site by 20. www.cbi.nlm.9.pmc web results comparing cannabis with tobacco. Smoking cannabis, like smoking. Link. HTTPS web results. Comparing cannabis with tobacco. Smoking cannabis, like smoking. Heading 3. About this result. By Henry 2000, cited 60. HTTPS HTTPS Marijuana and Lung Health American Lung Association. Heading 3.
Okay, I got it.
Voice search button.
Who helped to outlaw cannabis?
Here are your results for who helped to outlaw cannabis.
Federal Bureau of Narcotics 1930 answer is part of the government's broader push to outlaw recreational drugs. When the President Administration's office and countries had ratified the Geneva Narcotic Limitation Convention.
The Geneva Convention.
Criminalization 1900.
Okay.
International opium. Link. Federal Bureau of. Link. Controlled substances.
Okay.
United States v. Decriminalization 1970s. Link.
1970s.
Link. www.cbsnews.com AMP logo the man behind the marijuana ban for all the wrong reasons. Link. www.cbsnews.com AMP logo. The man behind the marijuana ban for all the wrong reasons. Heading 3. About this result.
Give it to me.
November 17, 2016. If you look for the roots of America's ban on cannabis, you find nearly all roads lead to a man name. https
Oh, they dirty.
.edu article the illegalization of marijuana, a brief history, origins, current. Link.
I hate when they do that shit.
November
But we're gonna
17th,
go to the link.
helped outlaw
I'm gonna
cannabis,
take.
Google search.
I'm gonna go to the link. I'm gonna go to the link. Because this is important. people to understand this link, because this link actually speaks some real shit.
Untitled Cannabis. Google search. Web view. November 17, 2016. You look for the roots of the record.
Oh, give it to me. I think it's gonna. Yeah.
Crossbar. Pro.
All right.
82%. Button. The legalization of marijuana. Of history, origin, current events, historical perspective.
All right.
To main content. The Ohio State University. Milestones. Connecting history logo. Milestones logo. Hot off the press. Book reviews logo. History. 7. Article. Volume 7. Issue 8, May 2014. Suggested reading. Images. Maps and charts. Print-friendly version. The legalization of marijuana. Of history. 5.
Let's go.
The legalization of marijuana. A brief history. First Lady Nancy Reagan expressed her feelings about drugs while riding horses with husband, President Ronald Reagan.
Go figure. Nancy and Ronald fucking Reagan. Anybody remember Reaganomics?
Americans are now considering legalizing marijuana has taken everyone by surprise. But in the midst of this shift in public opinion and state law, it is worth remembering the speed with which marijuana was made illegal. This month, Stephen Siff looks at how political and racial factors combined with the way marijuana users were portrayed in the media to create the illegalization of marijuana across the 20th century.
Facts. Let's get it.
Read. Origins. For more on American current events and history. NSA and surveillance. Comma. Class warfare in. Comma. Detroit and. Comma. Mass unemployment. Comma.
You know,
Populism and American. Comma.
it's some strange shit to sit back and read these little articles, man, because there was a man who ran the timber companies as well, who was also a part of that as well. I don't remember his name, but I have a web page tab that I could pull up. I'm gonna try to do that in the next hour to give y'all just a slight breakdown on that whole thing, because it's so much more deeper than you think. So much more deeper than you think. Before the Reefer Madness came, the movie for Reefer Madness came out, there was someone who was fighting to get alongside with who was actually pushing for Ronald Reagan to outlaw this product, and it wasn't for these criminal reasons. It wasn't at all for criminal reasons. It was to provide a clear path to success for the timber industry. Shit.
Chrome, one notification. Tap to activate. Tap and hold to long press. Actions available.
Who ran the timber industry?
Here are your results for who ran the timber industry.
History of the lumber industry in the United States, Wikipedia. About this result. The history of the lumber industry in the United States spans from the pre-colonial period of British timber speculation. Camera search
It's not
button.
what I'm looking for.
Camera search. Voice search button.
Timber industry and cannabis.
Here are your results for timber industry and cannabis.
It was industry-generated propaganda that got marijuana and industrial hemp demonized and then criminalized.
Did you hear that?
About this result.
Wait a minute.
Button.
Wait a minute. Let me run that back for you. With a little bit of time we got left.
It was industry-generated propaganda that got marijuana and industrial hemp demonized and then criminalized.
Okay.
http://www.ozarkia.net Blunderoff 37 How Marijuana Became Illegal, ozarkia.net.
That's what I was trying to find. How marijuana became legal. Okay. Now,
Timber industry and cannabis, Google search. Chrome, 80%.
the man we're looking
Marijuana became
for
illegal, WebView.
is in this article. His name comes up in this article in particular. How marijuana became legal. So what you do, this is a little homework assignment for my weed smokers.
America in the 1900s sought powerful rivals.
If you are a pot smoker, this is your history lesson or your history homework. You dig? So I want you to look up and read this article. You know, how was marijuana out? Why was marijuana? How was marijuana outlawed? Yeah, how marijuana became illegal. I'm sorry. That's the question that you need to ask Google if you want to research this article. Look for the article how marijuana became illegal. All right? But we're going to go into the details behind this, and I'm going to read this article. I'm going to let this my phone read the article for y'all, right? Just so y'all can get a head start on it, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that happened in 1937. Cannabis hemp was one of history's most widely used plants. Tincture of cannabis was the basis for almost every patent medicine prior to the discovery of aspirin. Hemp was used for rope, twine, and cloth. Sailing ships were loaded with hemp. The word canvas is derived from cannabis because that's what canvas was. Sails were made of hemp because salt water deteriorated cotton. Old sails were made into wagon covers and ultimately original Levi's jeans. And the pressed oil from hemp seeds was used for paints and varnishes. Everyone knew what hemp was, but nobody knew what marijuana was.
Now,
IO, 153, heading 2.
did anybody even understand what this person was saying? Remember what I was just saying earlier when I said that cannabis had multiple uses. The hemp plant had multiple uses. They literally just told you that sea salt deteriorates cotton. But it didn't do that. It didn't do that to the cannabis plants that were based, the cloth that was based out of hemp. So you tell me, where's the properties in outlawing something like that? Unless it's for financial gain, right? Because, I mean, if you think about that, that's the only thing that makes sense. Aside from racism. And they literally just told you that earlier in the show, that racism was one of the reasons why our cannabis was outlawed. Okay? So, as we go further, just, it's weird.
Basically, it came down to this. America in the 1900s saw two powerful rivals, agriculture and industry, faced off over several multi-billion-dollar markets. When Rudolf Diesel produced his engine in 1896, he'd assumed it would run off of vegetable and seed oils, especially hemp, which is superior to petroleum. Just think about that for a second. A fuel that can be grown by our farmers that is superior to foreign oil. What a lot of history would have been rewritten.
Do you hear that? Do you hear that? Hemp oil could be used for gasoline, people. Why are we killing our planet by fucking digging holes in it? Why? Oh yeah, that's right. Because the government still wouldn't know how to control it. They wouldn't know how to they wouldn't know how to moderate people utilizing this plant for its multiple uses. They would not know how to control it. See, the taxation rates that they would be like that was something new. We'll literally have 5 minutes at 9 p.m. on the East Coast. So we getting back into it. It's the Peasy Show. We back here again to talk to y'all on 420 about cannabis. Yeah, that's right. Let's talk about it. Cause we back. I'm gonna let y'all come back. I'm gonna let y'all take some time to get back in the room as we talk about cannabis, man, because this is a really tough. This is a really tough ass conversation we having right now, and I'm enjoying it. I hope you guys are too, because we're really learning some really fascinating things about cannabis that people may not be accustomed to learning about or knowing about.
806
It's just so many things that we closed our minds off to, you know, especially a lot of our elders, you know, that were a part of the whole Reefer Madness cult.
Basically, it came down to this. America in the 1900s saw two powerful rivals, agriculture and industry, faced off over several multi-billion-dollar markets. When Rudolf Diesel produced his engine in 1896, he'd assumed it would run off of vegetable and seed oils, especially hemp, which is superior to petroleum. Just think about that for a second. A fuel that can be grown by our farmers that is superior to foreign oil. What a lot of history would have been rewritten. Reefer Madness, graphic.
Come on with it, bruh. Whenever you're ready. As we go into this article here, how marijuana was
Okay, so we have an elite group of special interests dominated by DuPont Petrochemical Company and its major financial backer and key political ally, Treasury Secretary Andrew Mellon. Mellon was a banker who took over Gulf Oil Corporation. In 1913, Henry Ford opened his first auto assembly line, and Gulf Oil opened its first drive-in gas station. In 1919, with ethanol fuel poised to compete with gasoline, alcohol prohibition descended on the nation. Lucky Mellon. When President Harding made him Secretary of the Treasury, he was considered the richest man in America. In the 1920s, Mellon arranged for his bank to loan his buddies his DuPont money to take over General Motors. DuPont had developed new gasoline additives and the sulfate and sulfite process that made trees into paper.
Do you hear this? DuPont.
In the 1930s, Ford Motor Company operated a successful biomass fuel conversion plant using cellulose Iron Mountain, Michigan. Ford engineers extract methanol, charcoal fuel, tar, pitch ethyl acetate, creosote from hemp. The same fundamental ingredients for industry will also be made from fossil fuels.
Now, my question, and this is seeming to be like a question that I'm going to keep having, is, with us knowing the history of cannabis, and reading into the history of cannabis, and knowing that our country, our world, let me stop saying country on this one, our world is dying at an alarming rate that people do not seem to pay attention to, or have not seen to pay attention to, unless it comes to the fact where we're talking about, oh my God, there was a snowstorm in Texas. First and foremost, for those of y'all that don't understand the reason why we are so amazed at that whole thing in the beginning, is the fact that because it never really happens until now, until like randomly, and it's very, very rare that it's almost non-existent rare how it happens. And for the simple fact that it actually happened and they were hit with a ice storm, a blizzard. They were swerving, they were riding waves of ice on the road because none of them had tires like cities and states in the north did, because the cities and states in the north have to live with this kind of weather every year. So they're accustomed to having to insulate different properties of their resources in their cities and states to accommodate the weather conditions. But Texas, for example, maybe in the northern state, the northern cities of that state, and I wouldn't even think that it's so bad even in that portion. But just think about that. The same property that we use to make oil, for gasoline, gas for oil, we make gas for our cars, to fuel our propane and stuff like that. These are things that we could have easily grabbed from this plant and still been able to enjoy a longer living planet, right? Whereas now we have environmentalists urging us and screaming at us to help them save this planet by reversing the damage that we've already done to it, right? With all of the digging into the ground and all of the drilling that we've done and all of this constant disruption that we're doing to our own ecosystems. We could have easily, just taken a lot of this and put it in a whole nother perspective, and it would have been one of the least likely things that we'd had to deal with, right? So just knowing that, it's just fascinating to me that we are still stuck on stupid to not want to care about the property that it has. Because our government sure as fuck don't think about it, nor have any of us had the abilities to stand up to the government against this, to speak out and say, listen, man, this is some crazy shit. How is it that this thing right here, this thing that y'all left to the fucking wolves and said that, oh, this is a negative, this is such a bad thing, becomes so heavily populated with properties that beneficial to this world, to the extended life of this world, I should say. And let's just take that into the specifics. Well, let's read on.
During the same period, DuPont was developing cellophane, nylon, and Dacron from fossil fuels. DuPont held the patents in many synthetics and became a leader in the development of paint, rayon, synthetic rubber, plastics, chemicals, photographic film, insecticides, and agricultural chemicals.
You could have kept the insecticide and agricultural film, and making films and even paint, because we could still use oil for hemp-based oil, hemp-based oil paint as well. That's the crazy part about it. These same properties and things that this man was making using a synthetic that's actually toxic to this country, to the world, and to the breathing air that we supposed to live in, or we have to use to live in. This man was trying to, do his thing, and I get it. He, we're talking about, a era that was, unknowing to the damage that it was doing to the world as we know it now. And, we were just thinking about being, stepping into a new era, a modern era. The industrial revolution is what started to take place around the same time that the abolition of the cannabis plant and its products and its benefits, so it's just, it's fascinating as hell to me to sit here and listen to this article, because this article really this really just like made me emotional. It made me angry. I didn't know what really to think, because I was in a bunch of different emotions with this article, and I was very emotional, mostly angry because of the fact that this shit is fucked up. Y'all got us going to jail, and y'all charging motherfuckers like hundreds of dollars for a fucking bag of weed that could have easily fucking fueled my goddamn gas tank outside for my car. Like, what the fuck? Like, I could have been using that to fucking, when my lights went out and put fucking, and made an oil base and turned it into a motherfucking oil for my lantern or some shit. Like, but yet you have decided on this being so bad that it has to be done away with, and it's just not fair. So, you know, to the states that are still saying "fuck you" to cannabis, we in the states that do say okay that cannabis is fine with us, fuck you too. Okay, just a quick reminder to y'all. You know, states that don't like cannabis smokers or the fucking product itself, and you want to keep strangleholds on people who use cannabis and how it's being moderated around the country and in your city and state, instead of dealing with the fact that we have an addiction rate for crack cocaine, alcohol, smoking cigarettes that is way higher and a whole hell of a lot more deadlier than the cannabis plant itself. So just saying, you know, as we read on, just take that into advisory.
From the DuPont 1937 annual report, we find a clue to what started to happen next. The revenue-raising power of government may be converted into an instrument for forcing acceptance of sudden new ideas of industrial and social reorganization.
That's just crazy. So it's taking its time, but just bear with me. We're gonna get to this thing. We'll get to this.
Okay, enter William Randolph Hearst. Hearst Company was a major consumer of the cheap pulp paper that had replaced hemp paper in the late 19th century. Hearst Corporation was also a major logging company and produced DuPont's chemical-drenched pulp paper, which yellowed and fell hard after a short time. Fueled by the advertising goals to the petrochemical industries, Hearst newspapers were also known for their sensational stories. Hearst despised poor people, black people, Chinese, Hindus, and all other minorities. Most of all, he hated Mexicans. Pancho Villa cannabis-smoking troops had reclaimed some 800,000 acres of prime timberland from Hearst in the name of the Mexican peasants, and all of the low-quality paper the company planned to make by deforesting its vast timber holdings were in danger of being replaced by low-cost, high-quality paper made from hemp.
Ain't that some shit? Low-cost, high-quality papers made by hemp. Did you just hear that shit? Hemp could be used to produce paper. Not just any paper. You can use toilet paper. You can make toilet paper with hemp. You can use the same type of paper that you smoke with. You can take that same plant that you smoke with, break it down, and use its properties to wipe your motherfucking ass with, folks. What the fuck? Are you serious? Like, I'm just saying, I'm fascinated. I'm super fascinated by this article. And if you aren't hearing what this article is talking about, then y'all just don't know about. Y'all don't know nothing about smoking. Y'all need to know everything about smoking. It's aside from just putting that blunt to your mouth or putting that bowl to your mouth and pulling in and taking an inhale and deeply ingesting that smoke and holding it in and trying not to cough your brain out your head. So at the end of the day, I'm just saying, man, let's take an educational trip down the historical memory lanes of cannabis and why we are so fascinated with the rapid change of political stance on cannabis that we have seen in modern day years. All right? Because it's crazy. It's crazy.
Graphic. Graphic.
Okay.
Hearst had always supported any kind of prohibition, and now he wanted cannabis included in every anti-narcotics bill. Never mind that cannabis wasn't a narcotic. Facts weren't important. The important thing was to have it completely removed from society, doctors, and industry.
Did you hear that? Hearst was so much of a racist against other people using something that would eventually put him out of business because of his cheap and immoral senses of ideologies to produce things that did not last and would make people have to go back to him for more in order to obtain absolute satisfaction. And it still wasn't guaranteed that it was going to last the test of time. Think about this. Think about this, man. Think about this shit. Hold up. While we think about this, also keeping in mind, like, knowing that cannabis had such a vast use before this happened, right? Go back We'll go back, and we are going to go back eventually. I'm going to go back in a minute, but I want to get through this article, so we're going to keep tuning in, just listening to what this man has really did, man. What did he do? And we'll tell you, we're going to show you everything that he did and his partners did, the DuPonts and the Hearses they did to take cannabis out. And they didn't have much of a problem doing that. All right, so here we go.
Around 1920 or so, a new word arose, marijuana. Through screaming headlines and horror stories, marijuana was blamed for murderous rampages by blacks and Mexicans. Hearst continued to use his power of the press to impress on his readers the dangers of the marijuana plant.
Wow. In walks Reefer Madness. This is just fascinating, yo. I don't know about y'all, but I'm amazed at all of this information, because this information is vital to us smokers, man, to have a well-rounded understanding of what's going on in the cannabis world today and why it's still...
When the Federal Bureau of Narcotics was formed in 1932, Mellon's nephew Harry Anslinger was appointed its head, a job in Mellon's Treasury Department that was created just for him. Treasury agents were beginning to operate on their own agenda. Deep in the throes of the Depression, Congress began to re-examine all federal agencies. Anslinger began to fear that his department was in danger of emasculation. Although worldwide, hemp was still big business, in 1935 the Treasury Department began secretly drafting a bill called the Marijuana Tax Act. The Treasury Department's General Counsel Herman Oliphant was put in charge of writing something that could get past both Congress and the court, disguised as a tax revenue bill. Congress wasn't all that interested in the matter, seeing as all the information they had to work with was what was provided to them by Anslinger. They deliberately collected horror stories on the evils of marijuana pulled primarily from the Hearst newspapers, called Anslinger's Gore Files. Crimes that had never happened at all were being attributed to marijuana.
You hear this? You hear this? So basically, this man was one of the first people to ever slander someone in a newspaper article. He was one of the first people to slander someone in a newspaper article. Wonder why he didn't go to jail. Wonder why he didn't get sued. Oh, that's right. He had everything that the American people were trying to get their hands on. The American government. Let me just be specific. The American government was trying to get their hands on. So he didn't have to worry about being penalized, for saying things that weren't true and, speaking things into existence that really just did not even happen, through his articles in his Gore page of his newspaper. Okay, so this is just a wild ass shit as we unravel it all, man. I hope y'all are listening, man, because it's crazy. It's crazy. It's absolutely fucking nuts. Keep going, my friend. Tell us more. Because it's absolutely fascinating, yo. It really is. This whole thing is fascinating, man. It's just...
So, in 1937, Anslinger went before a poorly attended committee hearing and called for a total ban on marijuana. He stated under oath, "This drug is entirely the monster high, the harmful effects of which cannot be measured." Bureaucrats planned the hearings to avoid discussion of the full House and presented the measure in the guise of a tax revenue bill brought the 6-member House Ways and Means Committee, chaired by DuPont ally Robert Dowden of North Carolina. This bypassed the House without further hearing and passed it over to the Senate Finance Committee, controlled by another ally, Prentice Brown of Michigan, where it was first stamped into law. Once on the books, Anslinger would administer the licensing process to make sure that no more commercial hemp was ever grown in the United States. Clint Hestrom, Assistant General Counsel for the Department of the Treasury, explained to the House Committee, "The leading newspapers of the United States have recognized the seriousness of this problem and have advocated federal legislation to control marijuana. The marijuana cigarette is one of the most insidious of all forms of dope, largely because of failure of the public to understand its fatal qualities."
Fatal qualities. Fatal qualities, it said.
Rasta Girls, graphic.
Fatal qualities. Remember that. Fatal qualities. It said it had fatal qualities. This man slandered the entire marijuana industry. All for his own selfish gain. Put more people out of business than he made people business. The hemp industry was rising It was making a hell of a come up. Just as much as the timber
At
industry.
the last minute, a few pro-hemp witnesses showed up. Most of the confusion came from the using of the word marijuana. Most people had no idea that marijuana, merely a slang word taken from a drinking song celebrating Pancho Villa's victory, La Cucaracha, was the same thing as cannabis hemp, a plant which had been an important crop since the founding of the country. Ralph Logier's National Oilseed Institute showed up representing paint manufacturers and lubrication oil processors and stated that hemp seed was an essential commodity. Dr. William C. Woodward of the American Medical Association spoke in defense of cannabis medicines and in protest of the way the bill was handled. Woodward complained that there was no certain data that marijuana use had increased, and stated that if it had, the newspaper exploitation of the habit had done more to increase it than anything else. Asked point blank if he thought federal legislation was necessary, he replied, "I do not. It is not a medical addiction that is involved." Woodward went on to criticize the way the word marijuana had been used to deliberately confuse the medical and industrial hemp communities. In all you have heard here thus far, no mention has been made of any excessive use of the drug or its excessive distribution by any pharmacist, and yet the burden of this bill is placed heavily on the doctors and pharmacists of the country, and may I say very heavily, most heavily, possibly of all, on the farmers of this country. We cannot understand yet why this bill should have been prepared in secret for 2 years without any initiative, even to the profession, that it was being prepared. No medical man would identify this bill with a medicine until he read it through, because marijuana is not a drug, simply a name given cannabis.
So when they changed cannabis, they changed it, they gave it a nickname that we all know by marijuana, weed, pot, reefer. That's sweet cheaper. You know what I'm saying? All of these good old names that we know. Push, the sweet bubble gubber, the sweet bubble gumbo. You dig me? Like, when they were saying these things and they was changing, they used the word marijuana. People didn't know what the fuck it was, so they were like, "Oh my God, it's a new drug, it's gonna kill everybody." So just thinking about that, and like, so think about what they've done. Like, think about that. Right? Now, like, here's something here's a fun fact, and it's not a fun fact. It's not really fun, but here's a fact. Right? Think about how they did that, right? And think about how they do what they do now in politics. If you ever taken the time to sit down and decompress all of the bullshit that goes on in our government's, Senate, the 3 chambers of government, right? You hear a lot of crazy words like radical liberal, radical leftist, socialist, socialism, and all of this shit, right? Okay. Now, imagine living in a world where every month you wake up and you can wake up as as an adult man, woman, every month, knowing that you at least have your basic needs. You have a place to live, you have food to eat, you have clothes, and the rest is history, right? You're pretty much set on that, right? And you go out to your job, you earn an extra wager that helps you to pay for all of your fun things that you like to do as a family.
Instagram, Mr.
You feel me? You want to go to the mall and buy some nice clothes, or you seen some very fancy technology piece that was just sitting in the windowsill and was, something that caught your attention. Or a new cell phone, for example. You see what I'm saying? Now, you can go to the store, purchase this $1,000 product or $500 product, however much money it costs, and not have to worry about the fact that after that, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to eat for the rest of the month, how you're going to be able to afford the rest of your bills, and things of that nature. Because that bad thing that they called socialism, I mean, that's the definition. I mean, we can go Google it, socialism, and find out what it means too. I mean, if you really want to go there. But I just think that you guys need to pay attention to that. Like, imagining that the world that we live in today, in the country we live today, right here in the United States of America, is providing you the resources to get a head start. And no, not just a head start, to begin life. You see what I'm saying? It's so many things that you gotta understand with this whole thing, because these things are very much what they like to use to make their agendas known and more prevalently used. So for y'all that don't understand certain things, but y'all like to spew them out, some radical shit. Understand the words that you're trying to use first. You know, understand the situations that you're surrounding that statement in. So we're gonna go on. We're gonna keep going though. We're gonna keep going on that.
A few days later, Representative from Vincent, Kentucky was asked to summarize the AMA's position. He lied to the effect that the medic group's legislative council would not only give this measure full support, but also the approval from the AMA. The act passed without a roll call vote. Now we can see why it was prepared in secret. Passage of the act put all hemp industries firmly under the control of the very special interests that most benefited from its repression over the years, prohibition police and bureaucrats working in collusion with the petrochemical companies, the timber companies, the alcohol and tobacco industries, the pharmaceutical drug companies, and today, the urine testing, property seizure, police and prison industries.
Facts. You hear that shit? So, taking away the right to use cannabis recreationally for whatever reason you're using it for, took away people's abilities to do things beneficial to their life and their well-being. But it also made criminals out of these people, because just having this plant in your possession, or a piece, or the oil, or any of that, is now criminal. Urine test. You come back, maybe have, cannabis in your system. You can go to jail now. This is the thing. Like, this is what they were. This was the bigger plan that they had in mind. You see what I'm saying? So it's a fascinating thing how they did that. How they decided to take something that had no reason to be done the way it was done and do what they did.
In that same year, 1937, DuPont filed its patent on nylon, synthetic fiber that took over many of the textile import markets and would have gone more than half the American cars on the road were built by them, which guaranteed DuPont captive market for paints, varnishes, plastics, and rubber, all which could have been made from hemp. Furthermore, all GM cars subsequently designed used tetraethyl leaded exclusively, which contained additives that DuPont manufactured. All competition from hemp had been outlawed.
Do we hear what we are hearing right now, man? Because I think I'm gonna have to play that back, because I really didn't get a chance to hear all of it. But listen, that shit blew me away, man. Let's just say that one more time, dog. That shit was crazy. This is just...
In that same year, 1937, DuPont filed its patent on nylon, a synthetic fiber that took over many of the textile and cordage markets that would have gone to hemp. More than half the American cars on the road were built by GM, which guaranteed DuPont a captive market for paints, varnishes, plastics, and rubber, all which could have been made from hemp. Furthermore, GM cars would subsequently be designed to use tetraethyl fuel exclusively, which contained additives that DuPont manufactured. All competition from hemp been outlawed.
Do you hear this shit? Dude, I know you're hearing this, man. This shit crazy as hell, bro. You telling me that because of a law that was passed in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act, right? That was passed in 1937 in secret. It was passed in secret. They didn't rule above the board on that. They didn't even take to a polling. They knew that they were gonna have any wins if they took that shit to a poll. So they did it in secrecy behind the doors of their own allied friends in the Congress and in the states, in the Senate. So in the Senate and the House, man, these niggas took a bill to the Senate, to the House, to the Senate, and passed it and put it into law without even having anyone know about it until it took effect, basically. And by that time, there was no way, they had already outlawed it, and there was no reversal. The people who had been in hemp industries using hemp for its various product uses were the ones who, at the very last minute, tried to speak out about this, and were immediately shut down, even after they made their statement, knowing that this product, this plant that they have been utilizing for multiple uses was being outlawed, and it would shut down their entire industries. Right? They didn't give a shit because all of these other companies were benefiting from it. The alcohol industry, the tobacco industry, the timber industry, the fucking the petroleum industry. All of these people were benefiting from this. And now, most currently, before they started to decriminalize marijuana, the urine test and incarceration. So these were the government's major money makers in this country at one point. Major, still some